This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want is a great feeling. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can choose to bundle and save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I felt
really
right.
I was so
And I just thought, well,
I had figured it out.
It was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Story Collider, where true personal stories about science help us explore just how weird and wonderful it is to exist in this world and to be human. I'm your host, Misha Gajewski, and this best of episode is a little different than usual. We're still diving into some amazing stories from our archive, but this time we're featuring two storytellers you voted as your all-time favorites from the past 15 years. In case you missed it, The Story Collider is turning 15. And to celebrate, we asked our listeners to vote for the storytellers they'd most love to see back on stage. These two, along with three more fan favorites, will be performing live at our anniversary show on June 3rd at Caveat in New York. It's going to be a fantastic night, and we'd love for you to join us, either in person or via live stream from anywhere in the world. Grab your tickets now at storycollider.org/tickets. And now, without further ado, here's this week's special Best of episode.
A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I felt
really
right.
I was so
And I just thought,
I
well,
had figured it out.
it was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Lilly, and welcome to The Story Collider, where we bring you true personal stories about science. Reminder, we have shows coming up in New York, March 15th and 16th, San Diego, March 12th, Providence, March 16th, and London, March 17th. Head to storycollider.org/shows for more details. This week's story is from Maryam Zaringhalam. It was recorded in February 2016 at Union Hall in Brooklyn.
My 8-year-old self was a garbage student. My mom remembers coming in during parent observation day and watching me from the back of the class, picking my nose and daydreaming. This was me on my best behavior for mom and dad. Coming home from school, instead of going straight for my homework, I'd beeline for the fridge to pop it open, cut up some slabs of butter, stick them in the microwave to melt them down. Then I'd open a pack of Polly-O string cheese to dip the cheese into the butter for what I swear to you is the tastiest snack that you will ever taste. On days I was feeling a little more ambitious, I would stuff a pita with tortilla chips, stick in some Polly-O string cheese and hot sauce for what I called a nacho pita sandwich. Obviously, I've been innovating from a young age, but still, no homework got done. When I was caught without my homework, I'd make up excuses like, oh, I had to take a bath. Yes, it just so happens to be the longest bath in the history of the universe. In the event of a pop quiz, I'd dart out of the room, pretending like I had to desperately barf. And then I'd go to the nurse's office and call up my doctor mom and get the all clear to hang out with the nurse, coloring until the test was over. If I knew a test was coming, I would go in the morning to my mom, clutching my stomach and just whine, "Tummy," like the child that I was. Instant sick note. Now, cut to the first day of 4th grade. I walk into Mrs. T's homeroom class, and the desks are clustered in groups of 4. And on each desk, there's a name tag and a manila folder. And so all of us youngins come in, scrambling around the room, trying to find the name tags that match our appropriate names. And we sit down, and once the dust is settled, Mrs. T goes through her welcome to the 4th grade, the beginning of your new academic journey. Once she's done with her introductory spiel, she tells us to prop up our manila folders. And instantly, I know what's up. Test time on the first damn day. Now, fortunately, at this point, I'm a seasoned get-out-of-test taker. And so what I do is I raise my hand, a little shakily for effect, and go through my tummy woes. But this wizened 4th grade teacher is just not buying it. She sends me straight back to my desk because we have a math placement test to take. Mandatory. Now, I should tell you that despite the fact that I was chronically lazy, I never thought of myself as being particularly dumb. But I never really thought of myself as being smart either. I just didn't really think about it. It didn't factor into my identity at all. But Mrs. T told us that this placement test would split us up into 2 levels. And looking back at it in retrospect, it was level 1 or level 2. This was kind of designed to bamboozle our young minds into not really knowing what was going on. Because sure, we all knew that because it was levels, one had to be better than the other. But at that age, first is still the worst and second is the best. But 1 comes before 2, so maybe that's the one that I want. But 2 comes after 1, so maybe that's more advanced. And then at some point, you're just wondering, where the hell are my fruit snacks? The point is, I wanted to be in the better one. Level 1, level 2, didn't matter at all. The only problem is that as it turns out, homework and tests are actually good for something. They help actually make sure that you're learning the things that you're supposed to be learning in school. So no homework, no practice, no learning for young me. Mrs. T tells us to open up our test booklets and begin. And I take one look at that test and think, shit. Or whatever 8-year-old appropriate version of the word shit. I mean, I don't know what my vocabulary was at that time. I look at the first page, and there's just a bunch of triangles and squares and circles that I'm supposed to do something with. And then I'm supposed to crunch some numbers, and then I flip to the back of the booklet, and there's just a bunch of clocks taunting me, reminding me that time is running out. Fortunately, though, it turns out that manila folders are not the greatest blocking devices. So while I couldn't see the kid directly across from me, I could sneak some peeks at the girl sitting next to me. Allison was her name. And even more fortunately, it turns out that Allison had her shit together. So I sneak a peek over, and she's writing some numbers under the shapes, and so I follow suit. I peek over again, and she's scribbling some numbers in the margins, and so I do the same. I peek over again, and she's drawing some hands on the clock, because of course that's what they're there for. And so I copy that. I peeked my way through the whole test, which is really just a nice way of saying that I cheated. The next week, the results were in, and I was placed in the level 1. All of the level 2 kids had to pack up their trapper keepers and mosey on over to the classroom next door. Once they'd all cleared out, I took a look around the room, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I was surrounded by nerds, including my good friend Allison. So, cheating worked. Except that level 1 math is actually super hard if you didn't learn all of the things that you're supposed to learn in order to get into level 1 math in the first place. And boy, had I not. But every time I complained to my level 2 friends about being super confused and behind, they'd just brush me off and say, whatever, you're in the smart class. You're a smart kid. And this was the first time that I can really remember this smart, dumb distinction. I mean, sure, there were the kids that really liked books, and then you had the kids that were really good at sports inexplicably, and then the ones like myself that would just rather watch TV all day. But smart or dumb? No. We were all in the same class since day 1. So I was left with a choice. And what I decided was that I would kick my butt through level 1 math because I'd be damned before I dropped down to dumb. The first thing I learned was this thing called multitasking. So I could still come home and cut up my butter slabs and pop them in the microwave and dip my cheese into them, but I could eat those delicious delicacies while I was doing my homework. This was a total revelation to my young mind. And slowly but surely, I started doing better because, surprise, I knew what was going on in class. And this studiousness crept into my other classes. So for the first time in the history of me, I actually read a school-assigned book. It was the biography of the famed conservationist Rachel Carson, who I totally fell in love with. Slowly, I started spending my recesses in the library filing away books in exchange for ice cream sandwiches, so no child labor laws were broken in the making of this story. And I even asked my parents to enroll me in this program called Kumon, which assigned extra homework so that I could actually get ahead. And so over the course of that year, I lived up to my smart kid label. A year after, I sailed through 5th grade level 1 math. And a year after that, I got placed in the gifted and talented math program. The next year, I graduated up to junior high school. And here, they split the science class into level 1 and level 2. Now, the level 1 math kids were automatically placed into level 1 science. And the level 1 science was a full year ahead of the level 2. Except this time, there were no placement tests that you could take. There was no chance to cheat and leapfrog your way forward. And it was only at this time that I started telling my friends, the few that I had at the time, what I had done all those years ago. I would go off on impassioned rants about the failed system and how our fates had been sealed at the smooth old age of 8. Of course, no one really took me seriously because, I was only 12. Still, I knew that I hadn't always deserved my smart kid label. But eventually I did live up to it. And only because by cheating, I created a choice for myself to either sink or swim. And now, almost 20 years after that fateful 4th grade test, I'm getting my PhD in biology. I'm getting that PhD because once upon a time, I made a choice to cheat. Thank you.
That was Maryam Zaringhalam. Maryam is a molecular biologist and graduate student at the Rockefeller University. In the lab, she tinkers with parasites and computers to understand how small changes to our genetic building blocks can affect how we look and function. When she's not doing science, Maryam runs Art Lab, a series that pairs scientists with artists, and she podcasts with Soapbox Science, exploring science and policy. The Story Collider is produced by me, Brian Wecht, Aaron Barker, Ari Daniel, Christine Gentry, Skylar Bear, and Liz Neely. The podcast is produced by Rose Eveleth. Additional help from Brooke Williams, Lana Groger, and Justin D'Ambrosio. The theme music is by Ghost. Special thanks to Union Hall for hosting the show, and to my classmate in the 2nd grade who caught me cheating on a spelling test, for making sure I'd never cheat again. Also, that I'd be terrified of spelling. Thanks for listening.
Hey Story Collider listeners, if you've ever tried to build better habits, drink more water, eat healthier, sleep more, you know how hard it can be to stick with it. But one thing that actually stuck for me, getting an AquaTrue water purifier. Clean water became the easiest healthy habit to maintain. AquaTrue's system uses reverse osmosis to remove contaminants like those forever chemicals PFAS, as well as things like chlorine, lead, even mold spores. The kind of stuff you don't want in your body, especially long term. Since switching, I've been drinking way more water, and yeah, I feel it. More energy, fewer headaches, better sleep. Even my cat drinks it now. And the setup, beyond easy. No plumbing, no stress, just plug it in. Right now, Story Collider listeners can get 20% off any AquaTrue purifier at aquatrue.com. That's AQUATRU.com, when you use promo code COLLIDER, COLLIDER, at checkout. Hey everyone. So I recently learned a fact that made me gasp. Did you know indoor air can be up to 100 times more polluted than outdoor air? 100 times. As someone who loves a good science stat, that one stuck with me. Enter Air Doctor. This isn't just any air purifier. It's like the microscope of air filtration, capturing particles 100 times smaller than standard HEPA filters. That includes allergens, mold spores, viruses, gases, and even wildfire smoke. Basically, if it's floating around and gross, Air Doctor grabs it. I set mine up, and within hours, my place felt fresher. I wasn't sneezing constantly, my sleep improved, and I could literally breathe easier. No placebo, just cleaner air. Want to try it? Right now, Story Collider listeners can get up to $300 off. Just go to airdoctorpro.com, that's AIRDOCTORPRO.com, and use promo code COLLIDER, COLLIDER, at checkout. It even comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee and a 3-year warranty. Check it out at airdoctor.com.
A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I
it
felt
right.
I was so
And I just thought, well,
I had figured it out.
it was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Lilly, and welcome to the Story Collider, where we bring you true personal stories about science. This week's story is from Bianca Jones Marlin. It was recorded in March 2015 at Littlefield in Brooklyn.
So I graduated with a dual bachelor's degree in biology and adolescent education. I was on a full academic scholarship. And when I graduated, I got the Distinguished Student Leader Award for my service as the president of the student government. In between that time, I did research at MIT and Harvard, and I presented that work at Yale and at Vanderbilt University. And let's see what else. Oh, I played the clarinet. And when I started applying to graduate schools, I sent my application to a few schools, and I was asked for interviews at Ivy Leagues, and there were financial incentives from schools on the West Coast. And I chose to start my PhD at New York University School of Medicine, studying neurobiology and physiology. And I remember the first day of graduate school. We all came in, all the first years, just as equally proud, I think, as I was, and excited to finally be here. After the applications, after the summers and late hours, and after being pre-med, we're finally here until we're here for 6 years. We're still finally here. And we gathered around the bar and we started chatting, just as colleagues, learning about the other individuals, figuring out where they came from, what their story was. And so we're surrounded by the bar, and I'm there, just as equally excited to hear about my new friends, see who you're gonna date, who you're gonna be friends with, just doing that whole circle. I married one of them. But and as we're talking, and it came to my turn to talk about my past and how I got here at NYU, a student interjected and he said, oh, well, I mean, it's obvious why Bianca's here at NYU. It's because she's black. Here we go, okay. So what do I say next? Because this is a slightly awkward situation. And if my mind was quick, I had 7 or 8 things by the time I walked out. I wish I would have said this, I should have said that. But what I did say is something along the lines of, private universities don't have affirmative action. I have no clue if that's true, by the way. It's the first thing that came to my mind. And I moonwalked out of that conversation before my face started to sting and before I looked a little bit too frazzled. And on my way out, as I walked out past the bar and past the door, I took a survey of the room. And there were 6 generations of graduate students, 6. And I was one of 2 black people in the room. And that quota was about to be cut in half because I was going home. And so just looking at that, observing that, I started to think, after all the things I've done, maybe in this situation, they become null and void. Maybe I am just filling a quota because there's obviously a lack. My love for science doesn't really have a birthday. As far as what my family tells me, I was always like that dirty kid. My bifocals are squished up against a tree trunk, trying to see what's going on inside. I was always picking up stones, collecting the bugs from underneath the stones. Yeah, my mom's here, that's her laughing, because she knows it's true. digging for toads and snakes in her garden, and I'd bring them back to my laboratory. And my laboratory was my bedroom, so yeah, to my mom's chagrin. And my sisters, my brother did show choir, my sisters studied art, and they were in beauty pageants. However, I volunteered to swab the marching band floor for fungal spores in both the brass section and the woodwind section to see if fungal spores were accumulating in the spit when the spit dripped out. Yeah, so if it's nature versus nurture, my genes were straight on the road for nerdom. But my nurture definitely did play a role as well, and that's for my love of neurobiology. I grew up one of roughly, let's give or take, 50 children. My parents, two of the most noblest people you'll ever meet, if you ever do get to meet them, are foster parents. They're my biological parents, but I have many foster brothers and sisters. And I think my definition of sibling was different from the world's definition of sibling at the time, because my definition of sibling was anyone who calls my mom and dad, are my sibling. And so when my brother would go out and introduce me to his friends, and he'd say, oh, this is my sister Bianca, and they'd look at me, and then they'd look at him, they'd look at his blonde hair, blue eyes, and look back at me, and they'd wait for us to say we're kidding, but we weren't. One of my sisters, there was one time where we said, we're gonna go to Burger King. So we're gonna collect $3 in change. There's a lot of kids in the house, there's a lot of change running around. We were able to collect $3, get on our bike, and we were gonna go to Burger King and treat ourselves to a nice treat. So we get on the bike, and on the way there, immediately we're stopped by this beautiful new opening, grand opening, and the banner said, pet shop. So instead of going to Burger King, we diverted in there into the pet shop and walked out with a pet mouse and still enough change to get French fries. And so we snuck back in, and we MacGyvered our way back into the bedroom, because with 7 kids at one time in the house, it's really easy to get in and out undetected. And we put the mouse underneath our bed in a shoebox. And the next morning, we woke up, opened up the cage, and we realized that the mouse had a family that was just as big as ours. The week went by, and we were able to maintain this small colony. And towards the end of the week, when we went back to check out the mouse, we saw that the mom was missing. And it could have been the fact that we couldn't find the mouse, we may have chewed through, or a series of other things. But this caused something to break in my sister's behavior. And through a series of loud noises and stuff, by the time my mom came in, she was able to pull her off of me. But I took the hits. I took the hits because I knew the hits that she took. I mean, my siblings, both foster siblings and biological siblings, get it, because I grew up in Long Island. And so throughout the day, the Long Island suburban paradise is lovely. We went to Splish Splash on the weekends. We had a trampoline, we had a pool. We lived life to the fullest. We would spend nights outside on the trampoline and say, we're gonna build a tent and we're gonna stay out here. And then we would look up at the stars, and it was beautiful. And so you started to see that thing circling. That thing was a bat. And then you went back inside, and you decided you're not brave enough to spend the night outside. But at night, when I would hang over my bunk bed and speak to my siblings, I would hear the other stories. I would hear the stories of their life before they came into our home. I would hear the stories that stripped them of self-respect, that stripped them of a future, and that crushed their souls based on someone else's actions. And a few of my colleagues now in lab, we joke that my mom induces cortical plasticity because my mom took people who potentially would have been broken, and through love and through motivation and through respect, made them into individuals who could go out and do the same for other people. I study right now the neuromodulator oxytocin. It's known as the love hormone in caregivers. So mothers who don't treat their pups well, I've added oxytocin to their brain, and I've seen two things. It changes the brain signature from that of a bad mom to that of a good mom. And it also changes the behavior, so the animal starts to care for her pups better. I know that my foster siblings taught me or I guess it brought me to neuroscience in two ways. Yes, I study social care, and yes, I study maternal behavior, and I'm assuming that based on the nature of my life, that's probably where I got here. But they've also taught me another thing. They taught me that I can surround myself with positivity, and I can surround myself with people who believe in me, and I can surround myself with scientists who respect my scientific prowess and cannot help but to put their biases aside based on the data that I collect. And so now I'm a sixth year in the program. I defend my thesis in 2.5 weeks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And after a series of happy hours and classes and papers accepted, papers not accepted, passed tests and not so passed tests, my group, my cohort from 6 years ago, we met up for drinks, actually to welcome the new first years in. And that same student, who is now my colleague and I would call her friend, came and we started chatting about what he's doing next in life. And he started sharing with me some of his insecurities. He went to a state school. His mom was a single mom, couldn't afford to send him to a more expensive school. Now that he's going out in the job market, he's a little bit nervous about the fact that his resume doesn't read as well as others. And it was in this situation that I was able to share my feelings with him. I was able to say, I actually have my own insecurities as well. Insecurities that he didn't even know probably that he had catalyzed. That sometimes I feel like I'm thrown into a whole different family, and I sit with that paranoia that if I'm presenting my data, the first thought that's coming out is, well, I'm giving you a free pass, and you're here because you're black, not because you deserved it. And just as much as the words that he spoke to me 6 years ago changed the way I approached graduate school, the words that he spoke to me then and there also did. And what he said to me is, Bianca, come on. Everyone knows you're smart. You deserve to be here. Thank you.
That was Bianca Jones Marlin. Bianca is a neuroscientist and doctoral candidate at New York University School of Medicine. She investigates how the brain changes in the presence of the love hormone, oxytocin. Her research aims to understand the vital bond between mother and child and uses oxytocin as a treatment in strengthening fragile and broken parental relationships. A native New Yorker, she lives in Manhattan with her scientist husband, Joe, and their cat, Santiago Ramon y Cajal, who was named after the famous neuroanatomist. For more science stories, take a look at storycollider.org, where we have archives of the podcast and upcoming events. The Story Collider is produced by me, Brian Wecht, Aaron Barker, and R.A. Daniel. The podcast is produced by Rose Evelith. Additional help from Brooke Williams, Lena Groger, and Justin D'Ambrosio. The theme music is by Ghost. Special thanks to Littlefield for hosting the show, and to Bianca's mother, who came to the show and is indeed awesome. Thanks for listening.